That, let's start our public hearing. Notice it was published November 13th, we're meeting November 13th at 1:45 in the county commissioner's office, the courthouse. Purpose is to propose, the purpose of this section is to provide voluntary process through which ag timber producers in Bonneville County may make application to commit lands actively devoted to agriculture for future agricultural use. An agricultural protection area designation aims to protect productive farmland, rangeland, and forest land, and promote farm viability, support the local agricultural economy, and provide for long-term planning stability. This ordinance sets out the process for creation of the agricultural process protection areas. It's published on October 29th, 2024. Post Register.
Picked everything from.
Oh, yeah, everything from the planning and zoning hearing. And we made this part of the records of this hearing, so you don't have to reiterate anything that was already talked about in the hearing.
Okay. So as Commissioner Walker stated, and I can pull up the slides here. This is the agricultural protection area ordinance hearing. It's to amend chapter 4 of the Bonneville County zoning ordinance to add section 1450, which adds provisions for the agricultural protection areas as outlined in the state statute as recently adopted in July as House Bill 608. There's been quite extensive discussion about this. There's quite extensive discussion about this at the planning and zoning level. And this ordinance came to be as written by a group put together by the Idaho Association of Counties, different county planning directors from all over the state of Idaho, where we worked together to come up with what we thought was reasonable as far as addressing what was required in the state statute and not adding to that, but keeping it simple as to the way that the state outlined it. So there's quite a bit in this ordinance that was in your packets. I hope you've all had time to read through it, and I'll stand for any questions if you have any.
I have some questions. So, one concern I had was, planning and zoning administrator shall schedule a hearing with the Ag Protection Commission within 60 days after receiving a complete application. That seems like a long time to me.
That's how they outlined it in the statute.
So there's no room on that?
You could shorten the time frame, but you can't exceed the 60 days.
Well, I would want to shorten it. By the time the planning and zoning administrator has 60 days, and then the commissioners have 60 days.
So I'll just tell you that part of the problem you'll cut into with the 60 day time frame is we typically have a deadline cut off. So you have to have had your application in like a month and a week before the next hearing, so we have time to prepare the notices, publish in the Post Register, move it forward. So if somebody was to submit it, let's say the day after that application deadline, it's gonna be pretty close to 60 days before we can actually have their hearing, because that's gonna get bumped to our next monthly Ag Protection Commission meeting. So I tried to do it that way to keep it in line with what we do with planning and zoning, which is about, if you time it right, you might only have 30 days, but there's some scenarios where you might bump up against that 60 days just because of scheduling and publication.
Is it possible to schedule the first 2 or 3 meetings closer together, anticipating that you're gonna?
Yeah, so even though there's a 60-day limit, let's say that the first go around, we get 10 applications or 20 applications. We realize within that within the first month, we might have to have 2 separate meetings where we do these. So we're not necessarily saying we're going to push it out 60 days to begin with. It's just as the process gets together over time, if we're gonna try to coincide it pretty similar with our planning and zoning meetings, that's the time frame that's achievable.
And do you need to give that type of notice for the organizational meeting? where you get together, they form themselves as a board, adopt bylaws?
No, we don't have to do that. For that, we just have to publish an agenda. It's just for these, we have to follow 67, 6509, which is the same publication standards as any land use hearing, so we have to go through the same process.
So you could get that organizational process going, say, within the next 10 days, 2 weeks.
Correct, yeah.
That was my concern, is, they need to be ready to
Yeah.
start making decisions by the first of the year.
I had another question. Can I go
Please.
keep going?
Yes,
So under termination of an agricultural protection zone, it says that, it can be terminated under hardship as defined in this code. What is in this code?
It's referring to
defines
the
hardship.
state statute.
And can you,
But we
I
could,
didn't go far enough to look up the state.
yeah, we
statute.
can
You know,
get back to that. It's 67.
It was in your packet.
Yeah.
I know
Oh, I didn't find
the
it.
state statute.
Oh, I saw the
intended
state
for it.
statute in the
Yeah.
packet, but I didn't find where it talked about.
67, 9704. Let me find
It's not-
hardship here.
Everything you needed was in that.
It was in there. Just faster for me to look it up. The definition of hardship in the state code is the situation of circumstance over which a landowner in an agricultural protection area has no control and can then petition for removal for reasons that include, but are not limited to, an adverse result in litigation against the farm or the landowner, death of a close family member that would lead to unanticipated financial hardships, significant tax liabilities, bankruptcy due to another person's fraud, or any other illegal activity.
9703.
Yeah, that one's, the definitions are 9703.
Okay. And then one last question, and I'm sure it's in here too in the code. I didn't read the code thoroughly. But I didn't see in our ordinance, it probably refers back to the code. What if, upon death of the landowner? If his death occurs in 10 days. Or her that has made this application, then the heirs. Does that, if I remember right, when the legislature was debating that came up, and if upon the death of the landowner, does it come out of the ag protection zone?
No, so the clause is, and it's in that same definition, death of a close family member that would lead to unanticipated financial hardships. So let's say the landowner was to pass away, then their heirs, whoever inherits the farm, would have to come to the Ag Protection Board and say, hey, our landowner passed away and we are requesting that this be removed because it creates a financial hardship for us to keep it in there and continue farming it.
Okay,
But there's nothing that just blanket states if the landowner passes away, it's automatically removed. They still have to
so
come.
it
back to the
stays
board.
on through.
Yes.
I can see why they wouldn't want that to be an automatic out and have
But-
farmers getting knocked
But that's something that the board can consider if someone was to come to them and say, hey, this is what happened, now this is our situation. At that time, they can say, okay, we can take it out.
Okay,
You do have to go to a hearing for that.
Yeah, which you want, it's the same
Yeah.
process as anything else.
Makes sense.
and then I promise will be my last
Hey,
one.
carry on, this is.
Just in the purpose and just to make a comment on it, you're talking about, the purpose of this section is provided for a voluntary process through which agriculture and timber producers of Bonneville County, and you referenced that several times. So I had to wonder about pasture land, but I looked up the definition of agriculture and it includes range land.
Yeah.
And so I think we're
So
covered.
the reason that we left it as agriculture when we met in the IAC meetings is it defaults back to what the state tax legislation defines as agriculture. And as long as it falls under that criteria, then it qualifies for this. We didn't wanna start listing and miss one or add more that weren't in the tax exemption, so that's why they did that.
I just wanted to make sure that pasture land
Yeah,
was
that's all.
included. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Public testimony,
Hey, with that, public testimony.
you wanna come up and you state your name and address?
Go ahead, Sarah, if you'd like.
My name is Monica Sell. My address is 2951 East, 81 South, Idaho Falls, Idaho, 83406. And I would like someone to explain to me where the amount of this property started as opposed to 3 acres to 5 acres to 10 acres.
The state statute outlines that it had to be 5 acres or more. Historically, that's what it's been for any tax agricultural exemption on real property. So that's just what the legislator chose to stick with and put in the code. The county can be less restrictive or more restrictive than the state statute, but not less restrictive. So we could say you have to have 10 acres, but we can't say you can have 3, right? So we just stuck with what the minimum, the state statute outlined, which was the 5.
Thank you.
Good question.
I'm not really sure what this is about. Sorry about that, but, I've
Could you
heard,
state your name and
oh, I'm
address?
sorry, Tim West. 3528 East 65th South, Idaho Falls, Idaho, 83406. I just heard about this this afternoon, to sign something that helps, have 5 acres or more that, is supposed to help from, losing part of our land when you guys develop. Or when the city or county develops. Is this what we're about?
So I'll answer your question in 2 parts. The purpose of this agricultural protection area is outlined by the state statute. Was to allow people who are in active agricultural production, meaning they have had farm production for 5 years or more, to come and apply to keep their ground in active agricultural production, whether that's pasture land, whether that's cattle raising, whether that's potatoes, whatever you're doing, right? So the purpose of that is to protect the agriculture industry within the state of Idaho, so that those people can continue to farm, lock their ground in where they can't arbitrarily be annexed, or not everything is developing. Now, the second part to that, which you're probably referring to, the discussions that have been had at other meetings where people have talked about getting into this to avoid eminent domain from the county. There's a section in the state statute that specifically talks about the county still has the right to exercise eminent domain to widen existing roadways and intersections. So if you live along 65th or 81st or any other major road in the county, and the county comes in and needs to acquire right of way to widen that roadway, the county or the jurisdiction can still use eminent domain to get that roadway. What it does preclude you from is if you have a 100-acre farm and the county comes in and says, we want to build a whole new road and we're going to buy up 10 acres of your farm to run that road through, the county can't use eminent domain in that instance. So hopefully that answers your question about kind of how it relates to eminent domain and property being acquired.
Yes,
Any other questions?
I will after I leave.
Well, come to my office
I know
anytime,
how
I'm
that
happy
goes.
to help you, so. Okay,
About the online, okay.
Yeah, there's somebody online on Zoom, Samsung. Individual that zoomed in, do you have any comment or question? Still muted.
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Okay,
and then this is an ordinance, so it's an action item for motion today.
the chair will entertain a
Yes.
motion.
Well, before you do, this gentleman brought up one more question that I actually received at the soil conservation meeting this morning. Are there other exceptions such as airports? Could federal airports condemn ground when it's in a ag protection zone?
Federal government do that?
Right, we
Because,
have a lot of hard questions.
well, I know airports is one
One of the excuses.
One
they
of
use.
the things that are allowed for cities to annex outside of their area of impact.
Is an airport considered a political subdivision?
No.
No,
Because the eminent domain section of the state code reads a political subdivision having or exercising eminent domain powers may not condemn for any purpose any land within an agricultural protection area that is being used for production or agriculture, except for the expansion or maintenance of existing highway right of way as granted in section 14, article I, and section 8, article 4 of the Constitution of the state of Idaho.
In the case you're talking about was the Johnson Legacy, where they annexed outside the city. They used eminent domain outside the city limits because they were allowed to for an airport. But as I read this, the only eminent domain is on existing alignments of roadways.
okay,
So,
very good. That's what I thought.
The
yeah.
question really is whether or
So
not
where
this
the
stands
airport's
against
not a
federal
political
rules.
subdivision, I don't know.
Well, the
how-
cities is the city that.
The city
operates it.
that acquires the property is a political subdivision.
Yes,
So,
but this is not the definition of an existing roadway.
right.
Okay.
One of the things to consider when approving annexation or approving the ability to be in an agricultural protection area or not is the proximity to the airport. That's one of the discussion items for the board as they look at these.
Okay,
So,
Makes more sense to put cows next to an airport than it does side empty housing, but. You know,
well, Mr. Chairman, are you ready for motion?
yes, I'm still ready for motion.
I think this is very important ordinance. I appreciate all the work that Austin and his staff have put into developing this. And the work that the legislature did. I think it's an important tool that counties can use to, one, help direct growth and number two, to protect ag land. So I'd make a motion that we adopt is it ordinance number, say that again?
1-450.
Well, it's the resolution or the
265.
ordinance is 265.
Okay, ordinance number 265-24.
I'll second that.
Motioned and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And thank you. Getting this done
Kayla,
quickly.
did you print that?
Yeah, he's
Okay,
going.
perfect.
Yeah. This was the- So then it's. That was one of the resolution.
He's ready to go into all version.
Are you ready to?
Stop the recording for signing.
You wanna do the resolution
Oh,
after?
yeah, we can do the resolution too,
Okay,
but that doesn't, yeah, we can stay on for it.
Okay.
Part of it, so.
We go ahead and sign this one.
yes, please. And I think there's some, well, he's signing. I think there's probably confusion out there. I know there was, always was on my part. That eminent domain does not mean literally the taking. It means the taking at fair market value.
Also, it's purchased.
So it's purchased, and sometimes there's some finagling and some underhanded approaches to what that fair market value is. But our intent as county commissioners is to see that it's actually fair market value if it comes to moving forward with something that's been the history here